when we left the light on. The lamp in our bedroom had a way of flattering things that didn't deserve it. It was cheap, a thrift store rescue with a shade that made skin look like a decision. My name is Aaron. The man I loved was Felix, who knew how every street in our neighborhood learned its name. He took photographs for people who thought their lives were marketing. I wrote copy for brands that paid me to pretend we were all learning to be better. We moved into the apartment in a season that believed in us. The radiator hissed like encouragement. The neighbor upstairs practiced trumpet until even our complaints sounded polite, and the balcony grew basil that forgave us weekly. We made rules on an index card by the fridge because rules feel kinder when they're small. Be home when you say. Don't take pictures of each other angry. Don't make hunger into a hobby. We were proud of how boring our love was. Felix met Rafa at a gallery where half the art was the lighting. Rafa was a dancer with a smile like a dare and a mouth that made drinks taste better. He asked Felix to shoot rehearsals for a piece about cities that behave and bodies that don't. Felix said yes because the word no had been on vacation lately. He came home with his eyes still full of stage and said, "You should see what his back does when he turns." I said, "You should see what yours does when you lie." I met Oliver at a bookstore that believed in benches. He ran the cafe in the back and wore t-shirts that didn't lie about his shoulders. We started talking about coffee like it was a language and moved quickly to sentences that had nothing to do with beans. He asked if I lived with someone by asking if anyone would be mad if he made me happy. I said there is a man and a lamp and a basil plant, and he said, then we should be careful and also not careful at all. He didn't touch me. He let me imagine it. That's what undid me. The night it broke quietly. Felix came home late, smelling like rehearsal and the kind of sweat you don't get to own. He put his camera on the table with the tenderness you have for witnesses. He leaned on the counter and asked if I had eaten, and I said yes, and he said good, and we didn't say anything that mattered. He showered. I stood in the hallway and listened to water work through someone else's story. When he came to bed, I asked with my mouth. He said yes with his hands. We were good at the part that keeps the rest from falling apart. We were also pretending. Rafa liked late-night bars where the lights pretended to be permission. Oliver liked closing early and pretending the city had manners. I went to the bar once because that is how people tell themselves they are alive. Rafa tilted his head and made a joke about how photographers are like magicians who hate applause. Felix laughed too loudly. He touched Rafa's wrist to make a point. The point survived, which is what points do when they're sharp. Oliver closed the cafe at 9 and wiped tables like ritual. I met him on a Tuesday that felt like a test. He made me a cup with a leaf on the foam and said, "Show me how you lie." I said, "You start small and hope the weather forgives you." He leaned in and kissed me with the patience of a person who believes in instructions. I kissed him back with the greed of a person who is tired of being clever. He said, "Do you want to stop?" I said, "Not yet." We kissed until my mouth remembered its job. We stopped before the room got ideas. I went home with a taste that made everything else that night an argument. Felix was awake, editing photos with the lamp making his face look like a plan. He asked if I was okay and I said yes in a tone I didn't trust. He touched my back where my shirt had stuck from walking too fast. I said, "Did you touch him?" He said, "I let him watch, which is the same thing if your eyes are honest." I said, "I kissed someone." He said, "I know." We lay down like people taking inventory. The lamp performed politeness. We slept anyway. We tried to be brave without being stupid. No secrets that can read. No lies about time. No pretending that saying the word open makes you ethical. He promised not to kiss Rafa in rooms he didn't clean. I promised not to collect more firsts. We were good for 9 days, and then Raphael texted him a video of a solo he was learning, and Felix looked at his phone like a window, and I went to the cafe and asked Oliver a question with my mouth. There's a kind of sex that believes it can fix you. That's not the kind we had. Ours was the kind you have when the truth is tired and the room wants you to forget your name in a way that sounds like kindness. He undressed me like he trusted me. I pushed him against the counter like I trusted myself. He put his mouth on my throat with a care that made my knees reconsider their contract. I said please, in a voice that made the lamp at home feel unnecessary. He called me sweetheart like the word had just been invented, which is always the right way to use it. We stopped because stopping was the only thing left that felt like a new decision. I told Felix because my body likes clean rooms. We took a walk because moving makes confessions aerodynamic. He said, I let him kiss me in the wing while the stage manager was counting, and I said, I kissed a boy in a cafe like a pamphlet, and he laughed because everything sounded like paper. He said, do you want to leave? I said, I want to tell the truth until I get bored. He said that could work. We put the index card back on the fridge like a ritual. We added a line, small enough to pretend humility. Ask for what you want while you're still nice. He asked me to come watch rehearsal, to see how the work makes people look like the best version of hunger. I asked him to come to the cafe early before the city wakes, to see how desire looks without witnesses. We both said yes and then actually did the things. Rehearsal was a religion I didn't have words for. Rafa could move light with his shoulder. Felix shot like a thief who had learned grace. I stood in the back and learned silence. He touched Rafa's waist to correct a line and I didn't flinch. I was proud of that until I was. He looked back at me as if asking for permission and I gave it with 2 fingers. After, Rafa came up saying I'm sorry without saying and I said, we're grown men and also teenagers, and we acted like the sentence meant something. The cafe at 7 a.m. is intimate in a way that is harder to forgive. Oliver made me coffee and put a croissant on a plate like a joke about France. We talked about books we pretended to read. He reached for my hand and I didn't move back. He said he didn't want to be part of a triangle because triangles are math and he failed it. I said, I want to be part of a room that doesn't lie when it's dark. He kissed me very gently and asked if that made it better or worse. I said both. He laughed in a way that made me think he wasn't ready to be kind to me, and I liked him anyway. Felix and I started having sex again like we meant the part where bodies get to choose. Some nights were slow, the lamp turned low, the basil at the window pretending not to eavesdrop. Some nights were quick like the city owed us a minute. He learned to ask here like a man who had stopped auditioning. I learned to answer yes like a person who meant to stay. It wasn't a cure. It was a path. Theo, the director, the honest one, threw a party. People wore shirts that cost more than their conversations and talked about vulnerability like a coupon. Rafa asked if Felix and I were okay and I said, we are busy, which is not the same thing. Oliver showed up with someone else, a boy with hair like a decision, and my stomach did the math. We left early and had sex with the lights off because some nights I want to hear rather than see. When the break finally came, it wasn't because we failed better. It was because we got tired of doing interesting damage. Felix told Rafa he couldn't be both the art and the alibi. Rafa kissed him on the cheek like a man who worships and forgives in the same gesture. I told Oliver I wanted to stop making the room work so hard to justify me. He hugged me like a person who likes touching more than owning. We all started breathing in different rooms, and the city thanked us by becoming boring again. We kept the lamp. We moved it to the living room where it flatters books instead of skin. The index card stays on the fridge because we still need reminders written in small handwriting. The basil lived. The trumpet upstairs learned a second song. Sometimes I still think about the way Oliver said sweetheart. Sometimes I watch Raphael move like a rumor in a rehearsal space and feel a kind of polite grief. Mostly I go home. The radiator insists and Felix kisses me hello at the door like the threshold has a new rule. We leave the light on sometimes, not because we are trying to be seen, but because the apartment likes to watch us remember. And when he asks if I'm okay, I say yes, now with my mouth on the part of him that always tells the truth, and he believes me.